being recorded. I would like now to turn this over to Todd Wagner, who is going to lead this workshop. He is one of the ELL services administrators with the NYC DOE Bronx Borough Office. And as you know, he's going to talk about Nearpod. So thank you so much, Todd.
Thank you, Tristan, and thank you, Laura. I'm actually going to suggest, if you would like to be part of this interactive Nearpod activity, if we could just drop in the chat the link to join, which Tristan's going to do for us. It's just going to be a simple URL where you're just going to type in a 5-digit code, 5-character code, excuse me. It is not case sensitive.
It's in the chat now. So it's nearpod.com/student, and the code is IPZAT.
And then what I'm actually going to do now is I'm actually going to do this a little bit more student and teacher facing, so you can see how it works on the student end and how it works on the teacher end as well. So I'm actually going to be utilizing a split screen mode. Keep in mind that if you're in another tab, what you're going to see on the right, the student pace mode, is what you can have open full screen. So I'm actually going to start sharing my screen now. Okay. All right. And just Tristan, we're good for this. The screen share is nice and clear for everybody.
Looks good to me, yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to emulate what you would do right now, and that would be going to join the session, and the five characters are IPZAT. Again, right side is the student-facing mode, and the left side will actually be the teacher-facing mode. So you're going to see what it looks like if you're navigating this. This is going to replicate a synchronous instruction-based lesson. It does not have to be, but this is actually how you could go about doing this with your students if you're doing a live lesson. I'm just going to join as myself as a participant. And this is what you're going to see. So right now I can tell that people are starting to log in. I'm actually going to hide the student names. Best practices, just based on experience with working with middle schoolers for 13 plus years, and also working with the younger students, general ed and English language learners as well. Part of all lowering that effective filter, students who may be shy, or and if we're doing a live lesson, I may not, if I'm a shy student, I may not want to have my name right up there on the big screen for everybody to see. So it increases my chances, or it increases the teacher's chance of eliciting student responses from everybody, or as many students as possible. Okay, but what I can show you is on the left hand side, that's where the teacher can view everyone who's logged in, right? And I just want to do that, total, exit out of that, and then just see that. I can see that. But I'm going to hide student names just for the case of anonymity. And we're about 17 of us, so I'm going to get started. If at any point in time, if for some reason you are experiencing any kind of technical difficulty, you can always join back in the same lesson from the current slide that I'm on by looking at the upper left-hand corner of the screen. And that code is also listed. It's the unique code generated for this specific lesson. So we're going to take a look at engaging multilingual learners through Nearpod. And for the case of Nearpod, what you're going to see, if you have opened an account with them, if you've created an account, or if you plan on doing so, they use EL and ELL interchangeably. If many of us are working in New York City, we probably are also familiar with MLL, which is the newest iteration of multilingual learners. But just keep in mind, they refer to the same thing, or the same classification of students. We're going to take a look before we get into the objectives. If you want to take notes at any point in time, what you can do on your screen on the right-hand side is there's a pen or a pencil with a piece of paper. And if I click on that, I have the option of sending myself any notes that I take on any of the slides. So you'll have not only a copy of the presentation, the deck, but you'll have notes that you wrote to yourself as well in one place. And you can do that with your regular email, through Google Drive, or through Microsoft as well. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to get into just a brief explanation of Nearpod. Before I do that, I just want to take a little bit of a social emotional barometer of the day. Just wanted to know where you guys are. Feelings, how you feeling today? It's a short week, but I know, as I was just talking with Tristan earlier, that those short weeks can sometimes feel endless. One of these features too, the draw feature from Nearpod, is an amazing way to just quickly just garner responses, whether you're doing this as an entry ticket or even an exit ticket for that matter, or even an intro. I decided to just use the mood meter. You have many options. You can just draw and circle. Right? If I wanted to just say where I am, replicating that I'm feeling calm, I have the option of typing it out, typing over it, and I also have the ability to search an image. Right. So we think about the levels of English proficiency. If I'm entering an emerging student, I may not have that command yet of the English language. So, I may know a few words, and I still want to be able to produce something. So if I can type, even if I recognize a word on there that may be, when I speak Spanish, French, Italian, etc., Romance language, I can capitalize on cognates. So we take a word like tranquil or calm, tranquilo. And believe it or not, Google is getting better at recognizing, even though I'm typing it in Spanish, an image associated with that. And I can just submit, save, and just put that right in there. So my submission would come up on the teacher side on the left. And we can see overall. I can see who's in progress of working on it. If we're doing a live lesson, I can see who is submitted. And again, our names are hidden, but that will actually, on the back end, on the teacher reports, will be readily visible so that I can see everybody who participated and to what extent. And again, for any of these share outs, open-ended questions, polls, I have the ability to share anyone's answers with the class. So a quick day. So we're looking over at the mood meter here, a couple in the blue, a couple in the green and yellow. Okay, that's good. I guess we're avoiding that upper left as it is Friday. I'm hoping we're not ending there, but we're going to move on. So you're also going to have a copy of this lesson just in case you didn't get a chance to participate, but I'm just watching the clock. Okay, awesome. We also, most of us seem to lie in the green quadrant here, which is pretty good. Quick poll, same idea here. We think formative assessment, a quick thumbs up, thumbs down, that's great. But then you know what? At the end of the lesson, where does that go? Do we remember everybody who gave us that thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle? So a simple poll like this that's customized with whatever question you want to ask and the student responses that are occurring in real time, or if this were self-paced asynchronously, you can still have all of that data. Okay, so right now as we're populating this list, not very much, which is good because I don't want to sound too redundant. Then the never heard of it. Usually there are a handful of teachers and students as well, as I've been presenting this, who haven't heard of it yet, or maybe heard of it, but just really don't know what it actually entails. You just heard the buzzword. The question I have on your end is also provided with, I chose just a reference image, and this is the icon that's associated with Nearpod. I have the option of putting any kind of reference image or audio or PDF, any kind of clip, so that I can continuously tap into their prior knowledge and generate background knowledge. I just want you to also pay attention to this icon here, because I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. It's the book with the speaker next to it. I'm going to select Ferry, and now I have my answer on the student end. So the majority of us, if I'm going to push out to you guys right now the results of the survey, and we can see where the majority of our answers lie. Not very much. Okay, at the upper end, the experienced, we're only hovering at about 8.5%. Anytime throughout here, I can also take a pulse of the class as to who's participating and who's not, through a couple of different ways. I can click open the screen. If I were doing this and the students couldn't see it, I could see who's actually green versus red. And I can also see the level of participation in a percentage. So two objectives today. The first one is going to be a little bit shorter, and then I actually want to get us involved in part of an actual lesson rather than just to talk to it. So that's why I was asking you guys if you had a device, if you could participate with me. The first big piece to using tech has really been an amazing tool put out by Microsoft that has been acquired by Nearpod, and it's called the Immersive Reader. And the second objective is we're going to see how we can help our multilingual learners, our Ls, not just work on reading and writing, but we're going to try to tap into all four modalities, the listening and the speaking skills, which can also be leveraged with the Immersive Reader. So a quick note about the Immersive Reader. If anyone has heard of it, you probably know the power of it, or if you've heard of it and used it, maybe you want to learn about it a little bit more. The Immersive Reader was actually developed for students with dyslexia and students who had problems decoding text. But the cool thing about this tool is that it has now expanded into really getting not just early readers, but multilingual learners into utilizing picture dictionaries, controlling the rate of speed at which the text is read to them, and also being able to have the option, if we're looking again at the beginner level, entering and emerging, and even transitioning for that matter, to tap into their home language, to translate words, and if necessary, parts of the entire document on a slide, all from Nearpod. So again, four modalities can actually be done and practiced, all within a Nearpod lesson, depending on how you craft it. And I want to look at these few things here. We're really going to be focusing on what I'm going to be showcasing to you guys are some content, some pieces of content, and mainly the activities. The activities are where I can collect the data from the lesson. So this data is not lost when we're participating. It's not just going to be, oh, you know what, I did a great lesson, I used technology, but I have no record or count of what we did that day. Makes it much easier to have it just an automated report sent to your email following the lesson. And this was just an example of some of the content, how this can really push how our English language learners are going to experience a lesson. Started using this 3 years ago, and it was a supplement to instruction, but it's so crucial right now when we're thinking about 3D objects, manipulatives, audio, video. Not that it wasn't important then, but we know that it's definitely heightened and magnified in importance. I'm not going to showcase all these, but you will see a good number of these so that you can just get a sense of how interactive and engaging a lesson can actually be. So without further ado, I'm going to take a piece of a Reedworks Fusion with Nearpod lesson. And we're taking a look at Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico. Thinking about how we can leverage reading, writing, and also listening and speaking skills within a single lesson. So this is an example of, okay, I'm introducing my students to a new unit, and they may not have very much prior knowledge, right? So again, what we're going to be doing is not just learning about caverns, but we're also going to be utilizing some basic literacy skills here, reading and analyzing, summarizing, and comprehension questions. So first example of an activity that you can embed into Nearpod is called a collaborate board. And this is an open-ended kind of, it almost replicates what social media may look like as far as looking at digital post-its. I'm not going to approve. You have the option of doing that if you know your audience. But I am not going to approve the comments before they're posted. It gives us a way to see how our students are thinking right now. I'm not next to anybody right now in a brick and mortar setting, but we can at least see students generate some kind of responses in a collaborative setting. Also have the ability on my side to click on the reference image too, because if I've never even heard about caves, I want to have some kind of visual reference. And we can start seeing these responses happen in real time, right? Also, again, I still have the names turned off, but I could always turn them back on, especially if we want the students, and if this is a small group, we want the students to collaborate with each other or use discussion protocols, maybe directed at individual students. Again, using it with caution, but knowing your audience can definitely, yeah, can dictate how you're going to use it. And I also love the ability right now, we have what you did with an open-ended question, you can insert an image as well. If you're not really sure, or you can't really, form complete sentences at this point. Whoever's in this lesson right now can like other people's responses. Another great way is an entry ticket, pre-assessment, just to kind of tap into prior knowledge or see what we need to do before we move any further. Yeah. Yep, stalagmites and stalactites. Yeah. I used to always get confused with the difference. Cold and dark. Yeah. Bats. Love these pictures. What kind of animals? So the benefit about doing a live session is that we're still with the students, and though we're not talking over each other, we can still have some kind of interaction, and the students know that I'm with them, albeit digitally, but there's feedback. Okay. So the next slide is just a sample of, if I'm going to pre-teach vocabulary, I really do not want to inundate the students. I'm going to, since you guys are all on mute, I'm just going to have it played on all devices. What you can see is that I'm just pre-teaching 3 vocabulary terms, anticipating which terms my students might be unfamiliar with, right? Because these are now getting into the tier 2, tier 3 words. At the bottom of the slide, you have the pronunciation and the definition given to you by the speaker. So you have the option, if you want to actually record your own voice into the slides. I have bilingual teachers who are doing this in English and in Spanish, depending on the day. And it really just adds an extra social emotional element to it because their teacher's there in some form. Looking at the clock, I want to be able to return to the Immersive Reader, but I want to push through so that we can experience some of the different features that are available that you can use in lessons. So we have Cavern, and we can have it read aloud to us. We can read it, read along with it, hear the pronunciation. We have speleothems, excuse me. And lastly, the third word that we need to have as prior knowledge, and we're about to read a text for this particular lesson, is limestone. And that's it. I'm not inundating them with these 10 vocabulary words that are going to be forgotten at the end of the lesson, because we're teaching them in context. The visual, so crucial. If I have never heard of limestone before, I want to know what it at least looks like. So I'm going to actually go through this really quickly. You can just give it a try, but what I can see right now is in real time, I can see if we're doing a quick little matching game, I could have done this with memory or just pictures and words. I'm just quickly just constantly assessing, but in a very informal way, to know that my students are still with me. And we're just reviewing those 3 terms before we actually get into main idea, details, etc. So I can see that. I can see who got what right, who got what wrong, and every student is actually just like a video game, right? Why video games are so addicting, and why children like them so much, and adults for that matter, is because they're constantly giving immediate feedback. And then once you do something wrong, right? In the video game, or you have a better idea of what to do better the next time. That's one of the beautiful things about formative assessment. Instant feedback. I see here, how many tries and how many you got out of 3. I'm going to move on though, but I do appreciate your participation. I just want you guys to see what the teacher can view on his or her side, and then the student's experience. Following that, I don't have to, but again, thinking about our beginner levels or even our intermediate for that, I might have a quick close activity just to make sure I'm reinforcing that our students know what these 3 key terms mean when we see them in the context of a passage. All right, so it's a quick drag and drop. reinforcing the same words, cavern, limestone, and speleothems. And at the same time, I can see how my students are doing with that. I can view it later. So now this is one of the most powerful for me. I think it's always been the most, I don't want to say novelty items, but one of the most immersive and really meaningful items here. And this is an example of a virtual reality trip. Prior to taking a virtual reality trip, I would probably say it's best to give students a few prompts, one at most, or at least, excuse me, one at least. What you see, what you might hear, how would you feel? In this particular case, it would all be different on where you want to go and what you want them to look for. So we're actually going to just take a trip to Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico. And the students actually can now immerse themselves in the cavern. If you're on an iPad or another tablet that has a gyroscope, you can actually just pick it right up and it will move as if you're looking through, through a lens. If on the other hand, you're on a desktop like me, you can just take the cursor and move around and zoom in and out and really just kind of get in there. Thinking about what you might hear, what might it feel like, those questions right before we went into the VR tour, just so that they're not just aimlessly wandering around, because that can happen, and it has. So the VR is really a great tool to use with them. There are a lot of options that you can use with virtual reality and embedding them into a lesson. So I apologize for taking that fun away from you, but I just want to get into some more really important parts of what you can actually feature in your own lessons. This video is an example of another really big tool that is part of Nearpod acquired Flowcabulary. This is a Flowcabulary video. Flowcabulary is an entirely different platform, and there are it's actually based on Bloom's taxonomy of learning. But I'm only just going to show you the video because it's tied into the theme of the lesson. And I'm only going to play the first few, maybe the first half of the minute to show you what you can actually do to tap into it.
All right, class, I know you're ready for the weekend. Don't forget about your 5-page paper, and make sure that you express your main idea and back it up.
Listen up, lend me an ear. The hot new thing is the main idea, supported by the details to keep it all clear. The main idea is the reason that we're all here. Yeah, come on, lend me an ear. The hot new thing is the main idea, supported by the details to keep it all clear. The main idea is the reason that we're all here. Have you ever read?
So I want to pause there to just enforce main idea here. In this case, there are thousands of videos available by Flowcab, but why Flowcab and why hip hop? The videos alone, not just for general ed students, but why they're so great for Ls. I can say 3 main reasons. We're lowering the effective filter by increasing comprehensible input. Hip hop is one of the most popular genres in the world for young people, regardless of location, regardless of language. So music can help let their guard down to enable them to learn and receive the content. I actually tried this last night. I purposely was multitasking, and I'm not a good multitasker. And I half listened to it. And I was still able to, when the chorus came back and they repeated what the main idea was, I was still able to just kind of subconsciously sing along with it. But it also helps as a mnemonic device, which I really, really firmly believe in acquiring a new language and anything really. Second reason that Flowcabulary is really powerful is that it reinforces interpersonal skills and conversation. So because these Flowcab videos use songs, a lot of common language is intentionally used in these videos to weave the content together. And that can help students build basic communication skills. We go back to BICS, right? Basic interpersonal communication skills. Those videos, a lot of the language is used throughout their videos. Lastly, the Flowcab videos teach knowledge and use academic vocabulary words. So the tier 2, tier 3 words are what are really being enforced in each one of these Flowcabulary videos. Because they're academically focused and they teach the content directly in academic vocab, many of the song lyrics, they read like nonfiction texts. So they can effectively build the student's academic language proficiency at the same time. Really powerful. So that was actually looking at not just watching and visualizing, but working on our listening skills as well. We're going to look a little bit into reading skills. So the prompt, excuse me, I was going a little too fast. Just to keep in mind for the students to pay attention to main characters, settings, and other elements. But I will make note that there is another, you're going to be able to see the text again if for some reason, and for many reasons, you can't remember all of it. So we have here popping up on your side is an excerpt from Reedworks, Inside and Outside Carlsbad Caverns. Now this is all fine and well. Quick little, short passage based on Carlsbad Caverns, utilizing the 3 academic vocabulary terms: limestone, speleothems, excuse me, and we had the last one there. Why am I blanking out on that? But this is great if I want to, and if I'm a strong reader, but if I'm not, I want to use the Immersive Reader. I may need it. So now what you see here is that icon that I was talking about earlier. The Immersive Reader completely changes the game for reading. So once I have this in front of me, you can actually enable this on any slide that you're putting content into. I click on this as a student, and I'm opening up the text in a completely immersive fashion. If I just need help on reading, that's one thing. But if it just stops at that, then if I'm an English language learner, that's all I'm limited to. Now, reading is one thing, but listening as well. So we have the option of actually playing this audio. The text can be read to us.
Inside and Outside Carlsbad Caverns by Reedworks. Thousands of bats swirl around you.
Now that might be too fast for me if I'm just starting to acquire the language. I can also change the voice selection, male to female, female to male. I can change the rate at which it's read. Right, or I can speed it up.
You swarming to form a large.
Right. I don't think anybody really reads that quickly, but we never know. The other cool thing about this is that when I can go into this, remember this was originally developed for students with dyslexia. So I may need to do things like increase the spacing of the words, or decrease for that matter. I need to maybe change the size of the font. Reading on a screen, it's not always the easiest thing, especially when we're talking about for, extended periods of time. I can change the color scheme. Right? Certain color schemes are easier on the eyes than others, and also can lend themselves to a smoother session of reading. I also, when looking at the grammar, if I want to embed grammar for whatever reason, if I'm teaching, if I'm working with an ENL class, or even bilingual for that matter, I can highlight and focus on certain words by clicking the colors of the words, verbs and nouns, for example, which may be fine and well, but what if I'm colorblind? Then that kind of goes out the window. So I can actually turn on the labels. And now teaching my students, now we're looking at how to read a dictionary, but understanding that these nouns will actually have, and verbs will actually have letters over them. The other really cool thing that I love about Immersive Reader is that you have a picture dictionary built into the experience. So if I want to look up certain words, many of the words you can actually click on individually, and a dictionary will, picture dictionary will automatically embed an image to keep tapping into that prior knowledge and build and tap into schema. Lastly, if I'm a beginner student, beginner L, entering and emerging, and I haven't mastered the English language yet, I may need to use my home language. So I go to that last setting over here on the right. And the reading preference will actually allow me to either just translate the document by just single words by clicking on it, which is what I can see now when I click on the word. But I may need to have the entire document translated for me now. and that's okay if necessary. The best part of this too, I still may be a beginner, you know, a kindergartner. So my reading skills may not be that high. So I can also have this read to me in my native language.
Dentro y fuera de las cavernas de Carlsbad por Reedworks. Imagina ver a cientos de miles de murciélagos.
And the same thing too, I have the option of slowing it down or speeding it up. So that's basically the Immersive Reader in a nutshell. After we were doing this, I'm actually just going to talk about what we would have done after reading or listening to that passage, because I'm looking at the time. Another reference image, a few sentences to tell me as the teacher what you've learned about Carlsbad Caverns. Now, we don't have to do this now because if you haven't been to Carlsbad Caverns or you haven't really experienced Carlsbad Caverns, we're not going to be, I don't want to put anybody on the spot. But again, I can type a few words, phrases, right? All depend. This was actually geared for 4th grade, this lesson. So knowing that and knowing, you know, what students at each proficiency level are capable of doing, what I should be able to expect as far as output. Lastly, since I was requesting that you were on a laptop or a desktop, they haven't tweaked it yet for all iPads, but I have the option of recording my voice. So as an answer, if my writing skills aren't 100% developed just yet, I want to be able to show my teacher that I know something, whether it's in my own language or if it's in English. And I can do that by holding this button and recording my voice, just like so. And I submit that. And the teacher will get that. And the teacher can actually open my response and hear it in a post-session report. So we go key details. We've done a little bit of reading. We've gone through an immersive virtual tour. We've practiced with the tier 2, tier 3 vocabulary. And now we're doing something that's a little more scaffolded. So we have a graphic organizer here. And we have this is our reference here. Instead of a reference image, this reference here will pull up the PDF of the document that we just read so that we can fill out the document at the same time. Now I was playing around with it on the student end, and what I was doing was recording my answers, some as text, typing in the text. I was using pictures to fill out the document, the graphic organizer. And I was actually using this tool to write, if it was just a short sentence or you know, a word or a phrase. And I played around with that. So tapping into multiple modes of expressing yourself is a really powerful way to utilize technology and still complete an assignment that we only thought could have been done in a brick and mortar setting. So now we're moving to a little bit more, you know, rigorous of what we're looking to do. We're looking to summarize the story here. So again, different ways to record your response, whether it's written or voice. And lastly, we have just a quick quiz for comprehension. Again, taking the pulse of the class, formatively assessing. Multiple choice question. You could actually still take this quiz without having read the article pretty much. At least 2 out of 3 you could probably get right. But I'm just going to show you what it looks like. So what currently lives at the caves? I'm going to purposely say bears, so we can see what's happening and I can see this in real time, what's going on. That would be me down there. How are speleothems formed? Excuse me, does the author describe at the beginning? Okay, we're going to say watching bats at the Carlsbad Cavern. Okay, based on this information, what can you conclude? Bats are a popular attraction, which I've done, and the main idea. What is this mainly about? It's about the caves at Carlsbad Cavern National Park. So doing that, and I can see too, going across 3, 4, I can get a population. If we were to make this a little bit more competitive and we wanted to gamify it, I'm actually going to show you one more thing, an activity that you can use to make it a little bit more fun and maybe a little healthy competition as a formative assessment. So that would be, Since I answered all four, I'm probably around here, and we can see how many students in the entire class got the answers correct, which ones they got incorrect. But the cool thing about the share is if I push out the responses and the answers, you don't get, in this case, you don't get Johnny's response. You don't get, Maribel's response. You get your own. So I'll share that with you. And your own score is populated along with the original questions and the correct answers. I'm actually going to unshare that. All right. So again, it's not like, you know what, I took a quick assessment. I don't know what the right answers were. Class is over. Sorry, that's it. We can go back to it. Or we could do it asynchronously if we're doing this as a live lesson right now. And actually review these questions with the pictures in the original format that they were presented to me, if I'd rather see it that way. All right, so this last thing is I didn't build in a time to climb because I know we don't have time for that. But this is similar to a Kahoot style game or a quizzes style kind of competition where you're competing to get the most amount of points, and you're also competing with the speed at which you're answering questions correctly. You can choose 3 different themes, and it actually replicates, you know what it reminds me of? Anyone who's played those horse racing games where you're shooting the water at the target and you're moving the horses along from point A to point B, only this time you're climbing up a mountain. It works like that, and you can actually see that happen in real time. It's a fun way to kind of end the lesson, but also reinforce the points of the lesson as well. And the students really love that too as well. So I wanted to quickly just talk about accessing student data, right? Where does this all go? So I've done a really great presentation. I actually invited my AP or my principal in to see. I had my lesson. I followed my lesson plan to a T. Things went pretty well. But I want to show him or her how the students did. How do you know that the students learned? Well, once I go into my session reports, which this is actually what your dashboard would look like. You click into that dashboard here, click on reports. And when you do that, you can pull up the exact session that you conducted with that group of students for that day and actually delve into every single question or activity that you completed with each student and their individual responses. For those of you that were doing student-paced lessons and teaching asynchronously, you actually can do the same thing. You'll just see a house as an icon and actually access their individual lesson too. So it's another great way to differentiate the same lesson. If you just want to change certain parts of it, the students will not know. They're getting the lesson unless they're sitting right next to another student. They can have a different lesson. So great for grouping and great for differentiating too. And once I do that, I can actually go into a nice clean PDF that I can print out, or I can just look live in the Nearpod reports, scroll through whatever activity I incorporated in there, and you'll have every student's answer broken down for you, disaggregated for you. So if we're doing draws, if we're doing multiple choice, open-ended questions, polls, it's all there, and the level of participation. You also have the option of making that an Excel spreadsheet too. I tend to prefer the PDFs. They look a little bit more clean, but in case you wanted to do that just for just numerical data rather than looking at pictures and other things that they may have submitted, another option to actually see and view your data. And just by individual student, you get really down in there and can track student progress. If we were to do the same lesson next week. So with 5 minutes, I tried to keep this good. 5 minutes, I left a lot of slides at the end for resources for you. Rather than send a whole bunch of resources, I wanted to include them in the deck. So with that said, I'm actually going to stop screen sharing. And I'm going to just see if Tristan would like for me to do anything before we go to Q&A.
I think Well, first of all, thank you so much. This is amazing, and
Absolutely.
we've gotten a lot of positive comments in the chat. But if it's okay with you, I do have a couple people in the question stack, and if you do have questions right now, please feel free to type them in the chat window. I will unmute those who have questions, and we'll just take them in the order in which I got them. So, Aaron, I'm gonna unmute you. I know you had a couple questions. If you'd like to ask them to Todd.
Thank you. Amazing. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Absolutely.
And I don't know, and I'm learning a lot of new platforms. So I don't know how fluent you are with Peer Deck, but
Yes.
some things I'm noticing that are some similarities. So I'm just wondering if you can, if possible, you can try to see which ones I can start with using more often. It's overwhelming, obviously. So
Yeah.
the question is there a benefit to one over the other if you know both platforms, and what would you suggest, basically?
I do. First question is, though, how experienced are you with Pear Deck?
0.
Okay. So again, I guess it kind of sounds like I'm a little biased toward Nearpod because I've although I have used Pear Deck before, Nearpod is so much more robust as far as what you can do with it. I still have teachers that use Pear Deck in some capacity, and they've even expressed to me that the user experience on the other end, the student experience, isn't always that smooth. I can also say that I was presenting this to a group of special ed liaisons earlier this week, and I actually put in their deck a side-by-side comparison. I did not compile it, but a side-by-side comparison looking at Nearpod versus Pear Deck. And I can just quickly speak to that really, really quickly. The major differences are access and integration. Both you can actually incorporate right into Google Classroom, so the assignments that you want to maybe give to your students, you can put the code right into their Google Classroom stream or assignments, so seamless that way. The content, there's a lot more content, but again, you have to weigh the pros and cons of using the free account versus using a different level account that includes access to curated lessons. Same thing with the supplemental curricula. Right, there are a lot of different things that you can incorporate. There's actually a separate library for L's on Nearpod. That's an extension. That's not a free extension, but it's been a library that has been added over the past few years and is constantly being uploaded and revamped. Student engagement. I'm looking right now, video and web content. I'm sure there are a few workarounds. I know that you can do some app smashing as well for Pear Deck. But multimedia alone for student engagement, you have field trips, virtual field trips embedded right in there. PhET simulations for high school, or even just advanced science classes. Videos, BBC videos, regular videos from YouTube, slideshows, Microsoft Sways, PDF viewers. You can actually upload live Twitter streams. You have the vocabulary videos that are embedded there. And the lesson delivery is just a little bit more, it's actually a lot more user-friendly. Downloading the usage reports, you don't have the option to have an Excel or PDF. So you just have a CSV file, which it looks like a modified Excel in Pear Deck, whereas Nearpod, you can look at it as a much more cleaner report. And that's just kind of the icing, just brushing the surface there.
No, that was amazing. I appreciate that. And forgive me for taking up a lot of time.
No, it's okay.
Extremely thorough. This was amazing. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you, Aaron. And my apologies to everyone. I was actually chatting to you, Aaron, and also Sherry, who I'll unmute in a second. But I realized I was chatting in the waiting room and not to you guys. So you guys thought I was ignoring you, but I wasn't. So Sherry, I'm going to unmute you. You had a few questions for Todd as well.
So the first is, someone answered actually in the chat. I wanted to know what's included with the free version.
Okay.
And how difficult it is to use it.
Well, I will say right now that throughout the New York City Department of Education, through the end, mean, we're closing in on about a solid month. If you really wanted to test all the capabilities, Nearpod actually powered up with New York City Department of Ed, and it's now being offered. Everybody right now has the full district edition. The district edition gives you all the libraries and all the 7,500 plus lessons, whether they're just mini lessons, full lessons, VR trips, to at least get your feet wet and see what's available. You have access to some free lessons with the basic version, but any activities that you want to embed that I showed you, you can completely do that from your own pre-existing PowerPoints or Google Slides, and tailor that to your students' needs. So all the activities, all the content, as far as putting in, incorporating websites, PDFs, anything, it's all free. That's all free. The major difference is the curated lessons, and the ability to have more students on. That's one of the major things. 40 versus 200 or something. It's about that much.
Sherry, does that answer all of your questions?
Yes, I'm actually not in the city school district. I just wanted to learn about Nearpod.
Okay.
But the other thing is the Ed, I think it's called Ed Law 2D or Ed 2D, something like that. How does that comply with this?
How does
how does this app comply with the law, like with student privacy and everything?
Oh, with private. I know that if it's within you're creating a student code, it's automatically generated. So, you can't have someone get in unless they're guessing, which has, I know it has happened, just by a random 5-character code to get into a lesson. But other students can't see each other's responses if you're not doing anything collaborative. So if it's been approved by New York City, then it's definitely, the whole privacy issue I know has been cleared as far as sharing information. But yeah, and especially if you're doing a student-paced lesson, you as the owner of the account, and you only, unless you shared it with other people in your building or your community, you have access to their lesson and nothing else. They're not logging in with any if you're doing it this way, like I did with you guys, you're not logging in with a username and password. It's just a code. There's no personal information being shared.
Great, thank you. I don't see any more questions, and I know that you wanted to share the resources, Todd. Very quickly, just before Todd gets to that, I just want to say, if you guys are interested in other topics in the future, other webinars, etc., I'm just gonna type in the emails of either Laura, who's joined us, and she's the NICE TESOL president, or myself as the NYC region co-chair. You can get in touch with us if you if you want to present yourself as well. We're always interested in recruiting new presenters. And Todd, I have to say, it looks like at least a couple people are waiting for your next presentation. So we'll have to make sure that you get in here for another one as well.
All right.
But Todd, I'll let you close it out.
Yeah, and I was thinking too, the only exception to student information is that if they're included, if you're setting up and you're teaching and using a platform, an LMS like Google Classroom, and you're assigning the assignment through Google Classroom, then that lesson would be, you're talking about something else. But if you're using Nearpod in and of itself and not integrating it into your Google Classroom, then there's no other information being shared. Does that make sense? Right, you wouldn't have, as another teacher, if you don't have access to their class in Google Classroom, you wouldn't have access to any other information. Does that make sense? Okay.
And Todd, another question to people are asking if they can get your work email. Is that okay for them to get in touch?
Sure.
We all want to hire him or work with him or something. So if you're looking for a job, Todd, I have a really good principal who needs someone like you. So
nice.
Ed
Tech. I love it.
Adding Todd's email right now so you all have it.
Yes, twagner2 at nyc.schools.gov.
And as a reminder, there's a question about what you do. You are one of the ELL services administrators for the NYC DOE Bronx Borough Office.
Right. I right now I'm currently working for District 7. So we have 24 schools in District 7, and anything instructional and a little bit of compliance related is what I do on a daily basis. So we're supporting APs, principals, teacher teams, ENL teams, bilingual teams, mostly with instruction. But everything from, language allocation policies to Title III monies, etc. That's the scope of what I do.
Great.
And this is I've been education. I was a Spanish teacher for 13 years. And this is, and actually an ENL teacher for 9, I believe, but running the gamut between working with grades 3 through 8, and I work with a lot of elementary schools and middle schools as well, and recently transitioned to the borough office last year.
Right.
Yeah.
Feel free to. You said you had some resources as well.
Yeah, you know what? It's really it's a self-paced, and I'm valuing everybody's time. It is a Friday afternoon, but I definitely just wanted to. I can just talk to them because some of them are like quick slides, quick walkthroughs that hopefully may answer some questions that you may not be thinking about right now. As always, feel free to reach out to me. But just looking at some of the things, the additional resources, if you wanted to get started with it, right? I didn't want to give a workshop on how to start building a lesson, because I wanted to have a more immersive experience for you to see what the student can experience. More than happy to do that with you guys. I've also done lots of mini workshops with getting started, how to use your own materials, or how to tweak and edit lessons that are already part of the library. So that's just talking about logging in, how to set up an account, using whichever email you'd like, how to actually look and see where the lessons are focused. You can, from how to search, you can drill down by not just subject, discipline, and who works with them, but also by standard as well. And
can I just stop and have everybody find that, the only reaction on Zoom is like good or better, but we all need to give a little applause, I think, because Todd took, like he's saying, it is a Friday afternoon. He's probably helped people all week now that I know what he does for a living. And I'm actually heading over to our advocacy team now. We're trying to interpret the state's the letter, the policies on ELS, and we're going to be having a webinar on that in a couple weeks. So hopefully, Todd, you and your similar colleagues can participate in that, because we're having the state, the Office of Bilingual and World Language actually speak to us to some of the very vague language they have in there. But these tools are going to be so important whether or not we're face-to-face, because we are all just jump-started into tremendous teacher learning right now. And the potential of what we can do, even if we're back in schools, with a lot of these tools. And we want to set our students up well for the summer. So we were mentioning at the beginning, we're going to have a couple webinars on how do you set off your elementary students, your middle schoolers, your high schoolers, and your adult learners into the summer months. Right. So that those self-paced modules in Nearpod could be a really, really nice way to give students a place to go and continue to work. So I want to thank you. I have to leave, but I just want to say goodbye to everybody. And
thank you so much for having me, Laura.
Thank you. This was great.
I appreciate it, definitely. Yeah, no, just to quickly reiterate what Laura said, the typical house is not what we necessarily think is going on. As far as students being able to have access to, where I am might not be where students are right now in other parts of the state. Like, you know, in I'm in Westchester right now, but you know what? It doesn't look the same. Students are sharing devices. Students have to maybe compete with lots of other people in the household, even for Wi-Fi access. So there may not be, if we're talking about synchronous teaching, there may not always be this long amount of time or a consistent time. And I know that's been an issue, you know, not not locally, but it's been regional. And getting everybody in the same place at the same time is not the easiest ask right now. You know, so the ability to have the same lesson that you could do synchronously turned into a self-paced lesson and even modified is really powerful as well. Yeah. Searching the lesson library, editing a lesson, a quick walk through, and launching and sharing a lesson code like I did here. If you wanted to do a live session with your class, or even if you just wanted to guide them through, because you can do that through any video conferencing platform, Zoom, Teams, Google Meet. There's really not that many restrictions or boundaries as far as what you can do, and the ease at which you can put everything into a presentation. Everything. I didn't even talk about Flipgrid, because Flipgrid is actually an integration that you could use in Nearpod, and you don't have to do, open a million other windows. We're trying to work smarter here, and it's a lot to navigate, especially if not everybody's learning curve with tech is the same. So launching a live paste, launching a student paste, and then just what the L library looks like as a separate library that you may want more information about. And just lastly, just a couple of notes about the Immersive Reader. I know that there's still, even if you're not in New York City, I think they may still be offering, don't quote me on this, but because of coronavirus, I know that they have been giving free trials to the gold level. It's the silver, gold, platinum, and district. And the district, which is what is being offered in New York City right now, is you can just have a run at it and see everything that's really there. And that's really it. So yeah, if there's anything that's not in these resources, please, and even if there is and you want to know more about it, I'm here.
Thank you so much, Todd. This was
My pleasure.
amazing. And thank you all for coming as well. As Laura mentioned, this will be on the Nice Seesaw YouTube channel, and you all have Todd's contact information. You have mine and Laura's as well, in case you want to get in touch with us. And we look forward to seeing you at the next one. So thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend.